it's crucial that the teams rock fire jerseys for the big game.
You know this guy don't care. Mr. Matthew, time to unleash hell.
I think there's been some pretty good and some not so good jerseys that we've seen over the years. So today, we're going to take a look back at the 5 best and the 5 worst jerseys ever worn in the Super Bowl. Best, Super Bowl 20, Patriots. The Super Bowl 20 did not go exactly as the New England Patriots had hoped, as they got their teeth kicked in by the infamous 85 Bears. But considering they went up against a 15-1 Chicago team that many believe to be one of the greatest of all time, I don't know how much hope the 11-5 Patriots really had going into the game. After all, they were the first road wildcard team to advance to a Super Bowl. It's a good thing they didn't get their hopes up too high, because this one was a blowout through and through, to the tune of 46-10. On the bright side, they did manage to sport some pretty epic jerseys, way better than the ones they rocked in the 2000s when they were actually winning Super Bowls. Between the strong red shade on the uni, the Patriot logo on the helmet, and the 3 stripes running down the side of the pants, this look was flawless. If only their play was able to match how good they looked on the field. Worst, Super Bowl 35, Giants. The 2000 Giants were, in my estimation, one of the most boring teams we have ever seen play in a Super Bowl. Jim Fassel was a good head coach, but didn't bring much in the way of innovation or excitement to the game. Kerry Collins had a good season, one that really revived his career, but let's face it, he was slightly above average at best. Between Ron Dane and Tiki Barber, they had a great rushing attack, but it was nothing flashy, which is exactly the vibe that their Super Bowl jerseys brought. That blue on gray was about as meh as it gets, and it made the Giants look even more boring, as they got steamrolled by the Ravens 34-7. Putting up under 115 yards passing and only 66 yards on the ground. Rather fitting to wear those stinkers of a jersey in this one, if you ask me. Best, Super Bowl 53, Rams. The 2019 LA Rams, led by Sean McVay, Jared Goff, and Aaron Donald, did not have the showing that they'd want in Super Bowl 53 against Brady, Belichick, and co. One of the most exciting offenses in the league all year long put up just 3 points in an absolute snooze fest of a game that New England took by a final of 13-3. To their credit, though, the Rams did look extremely fresh under the bright lights of the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium down in Atlanta. Those bright blue and yellow jerseys just popped in a way that is pretty rare for NFL uniforms, which are generally pretty conservative in their design, especially contrasted against the Patriots' white unis. I'm sure McVay would have rather actually won the game than just the fashion show, but sometimes you gotta take your moral victories where you can get them. Besides, now that he has a Super Bowl win under his belt, that loss probably doesn't sting so bad. So just take the compliment, Sean. Worst, Super Bowl 51, Patriots. Speaking of boring Patriots uniforms, I know that they had to wear the white, which is inherently somewhat bland, but man, does New England ever have some underwhelming white jerseys. This was the legendary 28-3 Super Bowl, so credit to the Patriots for that. But think of how much cooler that comeback would have been if they were rocking the old Pat the Patriot uniforms instead of this peeping scoop of vanilla. It's hard to poke holes in the Patriots dynasty no matter how much the media has tried to, at least according to Patriots fans, but if you ask me, having a gripe with their uniforms is way more than fair, especially the white on blue ones that they wore against Atlanta. Not to bring up a sore subject, but you'd think with all the influence he had on the franchise and his then wife being a fashion icon that maybe Tom, and Giselle for that matter, would have been able to get some cooler jerseys for this team. Best, Super Bowl 54, Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals have long held one of the best uniform designs around the league. It's hard to compete with a team that has legitimate tiger stripes and the dynamic contrast between black, orange, and white. And the uniforms they rocked in Super Bowl 54 against the Los Angeles Rams were no exception. Cincinnati rolled out a new design that really, to me, was the complete package. It featured bright orange socks which ran into white pants that had, in my opinion, one of the best details I've seen on an NFL uniform in some time. Then to top it off, they had their black jerseys and a modern take take on the striped helmet. This right here was simply an epic combination. The Bengals hit the mark across the board. Plus, it helped that they had guys like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase rocking the jerseys because, hey, let's face it, those guys can make damn near anything look good. Unfortunately for Bengals fans, the victory stopped there because Cincy was ultimately bested by the Rams to the tune of 23-20. But hey, at least they looked good getting their hearts broken by Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp down the stretch of that game. Worst, Super Bowl VII, Washington. Super Bowl VII between the Miami Dolphins and Washington then Redskins is one of the most famous games in NFL history. By edging out Washington 14-7, the Dolphins completed the unthinkable. A perfect season. But 19-0 isn't the only reason that this game was memorable. The Washington jerseys were so bad that, to me, they are pretty much unforgettable, even if I'd like to pretend that they just didn't exist. And before anybody gets all fired up, this isn't just about the logo that they've since parted ways with. The color scheme of these uniforms was absolutely horrendous. It looks like they were designed as a part of a guerrilla marketing campaign for Heinz, with mustard yellow somehow being the nicest thing you can say about those pants, which just don't pair with that jersey at all. The only, and I mean only, redeeming quality about this design, which has saved it from being an utter abomination, was the striped pattern on the socks, which does help to tie the colors together a little bit, but man, all things considered, these are easily one of the worst uniforms ever worn in a Super Bowl. Best Super Bowl VI, Dolphins. The Super Bowl VI was the Miami Dolphins coming out party, in which the team first inserted itself into the public consciousness of the time. It was their first of 3 straight Super Bowl appearances, 2 of which they'd win. Unfortunately, in this one, they lost to the Dallas Cowboys 24-3. Just about the only thing they did right was pick out their uniforms. Miami wore what I would describe as an aqua-colored jersey with white numbers that had a pencil-thin orange outline around them, along with white pants that had a two-tone stripe that split down the side of them. At the time, this was considered to be very modern, almost bordering on edgy color schemes. So they really had to nail the design, and they did just that. Worst, Super Bowl 37, Raiders. While the Raiders have one of the most iconic logos and really jerseys in the NFL, they managed to completely miss the mark with their choice in Super Bowl 37 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is partially a crime by comparison because their white uniforms are just so much worse than the legendary silver and black that most people think of when they think Raiders football. Obviously, they had to wear white. That part of it was not a choice, but they needed to do something to add to these uniforms, man. They are just so darn plain. White on silver with one thin black line running down the side of the pants. Literally, the only good thing about this design is that by default it has the Raiders logo on it, which, you know, is iconic. But other than that, these uniforms really do nothing for me. Worst of all for the Raiders, they weren't just sleeping at the wheel when they're picking out their uniforms for this game, they also basically forgot to even show up, and went on to get their doors blown off by their former head coach John Gruden and his Tampa Bay Buccaneers by a final score of 48-21. All in all, a terrible showing and some terrible jerseys for one of the NFL's crown jewel franchises. Best Super Bowl 54, Chiefs. Let's face it, anything that superstars like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce wear is going to look pretty epic while they dice up opposing defenses and make plays that frankly were previously thought to be impossible, which is exactly what they and the rest of the Kansas City Chiefs did when they came from behind to win Super Bowl 54 against Kyle Shanahan, Jimmy Garoppolo, and the rest of that beastly San Francisco 49ers team. And if the performance on the field wasn't impressive enough, the icing on the cake was that they did it all in a dramatic fashion, wearing one of the boldest uniforms ever worn in a Super Bowl. These jerseys were somehow redder than red, but not in an obnoxious way, as they were balanced out nicely by the big white numbers and the gold accents. I'm also always a fan of when a team adds a little pizzazz to the socks to tie the whole color scheme together, which Kansas City did nicely with the white gold and white band that wrapped around at the shin height. All things considered, this has to be one of the best jersey combinations that has ever been donned on Super Bowl Sunday. Worst, Super Bowl 40, Seahawks. Finally, we journey back to Ford Field in 2006, the home of Super Bowl 40 and one of the worst jersey displays that these two eyes have ever seen. green, all courtesy of the Seattle Seahawks. At some point during the early 2000s, Seattle rolled out one of the ugliest uniforms to ever grace an NFL field, and they decided to rock one of the worst iterations of that uni during this Super Bowl. These bad boys were a horrendous shade of blue with some green accents throughout that could barely be seen by the naked eye. And the crazy part was, they were released as a part of what was essentially an early 2000s rebrand from their super retro look of the past, which, don't get me wrong, isn't the worst idea after entering a new millennium, but honestly, I'm just not sure what they were going for here. It's almost like they were trying to capture the dreariness of the Pacific Northwest and turn it into a color scheme in Jersey to put it on display for the rest of the world. Sorry, Seattle, we get that it rains all the time up there and all that, but we are not interested in sharing in your misery. And neither were the Steelers, as they cruised to a 21-10 victory in this one. But which Super Bowl jersey do you think was the best of all time? Which one do you think was the worst? And what did you think of this year's jerseys? Let us know in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.